Welcome back, loyal fight fans, to boxing. Eat that shit up. I am your humble host. I am Tummy Tom O'Neill. I am the body snatcher, and I am back at it. We are first going to touch on the UFC event that took place. Now, thank God for that Moreno-Figueiredo 3 fight in the co-main event, because that was absolutely epic. You know, you have to run a fourth one at this point. You absolutely have to. Now, these guys should fight each other every week. These guys are made for each other. They should fight a best of 10, really, because these fights just won't disappoint. Aside from that, we had the Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane fight. Now, we took an L there. I was a little bit upset about it, not just because of taking the L, but no one expected Francis to wrestle. Now, in hindsight, that's very smart of him, because no one on the planet expected Francis Ngannou to wrestle like that. He said after that he had a knee injury. Now, that's going to play a big part in probably why he decided to fight that way. But also, I've watched this fight 3 times. And upon the second, third rewatch, for sure, I thought it was closer at first, but for sure, Cyril Gane took the first 2 rounds. And this was also another reason why he probably, resigned to kind of wrestle. Now, another thing is I did a short video on this about should the UFC implement a rule where they stand fighters up after about 60 seconds or so, from the mat, if they're not going for submission attempts, if they're not, actively doing any kind of effective ground and pound, and they're just kind of sitting there, especially if they're not even moving positions on the ground. I'm a big believer in that. I just think you have to be doing something. And listen, certain referees already will do that. They will stand fighters up, then others won't. And that's because you don't have a set rule that they have to follow, where a referee has to say, it's been this long, you haven't done it, and I'll stand you up. It's just up to their discretion in a newer sport that hasn't had concrete rules in it. So that's a topic that I'm kind of fascinated with. I think that eventually they will go that route, or something to the extent of that kind of a rule set. Again, kudos to Francis Ngannou, who was able to retain his heavyweight world title in a fight that he was losing to take the last 3 rounds, because he lost the first 2, is very impressive. Also, wrestling or no wrestling, no one thought that Francis Ngannou could win the fight by decision. Anyone would think he'd have to get the knockout against a very technical guy like Gane. Yeah, that's kind of where I stand on that. And obviously it's very good that he did that. Now, did it make for an exciting fight? No. I mean, there's just no debating that. It didn't make for an exciting fight. But regardless, that's out of the way. Now we're looking forward to this Saturday in boxing. We have a real good contest under that Bob Arum umbrella of ESPN Top Rank. We have Robson Conceicao taking on Javier Martinez. Martinez a good fighter. Martinez 17-0, no slouch. Not a lot of great names on his resume, to be honest. Now, Robson Conceicao, that's a guy that has a very storied, kind of legendary amateur career. Technically, even beating Vasily Lomachenko in the amateurs before the decision was overturned afterwards in the fight. They technically had given him a win over him. He had beaten Oscar Valdez in the amateurs before their professional fight, and he almost did it again in the professional fight. For my money, he bagged the first 5 rounds of that fight, and then it kind of slipped away from him. And Valdez, to his credit, did some really good work there in those later rounds, and I think he deserved the victory. But nonetheless, an extremely close fight. Now, for Robson Conceicao to come off of that loss in a big world title fight against Valdez, this a good opponent. No slouch at all, fighting another undefeated fighter very good thing to see from him. Also, a pretty quick turnaround. It was not long since the Valdez Conceicao fight, and now we're seeing him back. On this undercard, we also got Nico Ali Walsh. Now I'm going to touch on that real quick. He's fighting, I believe the guy's name is Jeremy Yeager, and you know, they have a record for him of 1-1, you know, one draw and 1 win and no losses. But you know, I think the guy, I don't know much about the guy, but I've said this before, just based on the, not on Yeager, but on Nico Ali Walsh, that this is a big name value thing. They brought him on because he's the grandson of the great Muhammad Ali. So this is a name value kind of cash grab thing to grab eyeballs and put them on the prelims of these cards, which is what they've been doing, to get some eyeballs on those prelims and not just the main event. And that's a smart move. But as far as talking about boxing and people's capability, fighters' capabilities, I haven't seen too much from Nico Ali Walsh. But that's okay. That's normal because he's just starting out. But people lose sight of that because this isn't a guy that no one knows of. It's a guy that's very much in the spotlight because he has that Ali in his name. So people kind of lose sight of that. But these guys that he is nonetheless, he's a human being who's just starting off. And these guys tend to have tough fights. They tend to need to learn, win or lose. Now, he's won all his fights so far. But I thought that, you know, I've already seen people kind of giving him fits in there, giving him a bit of trouble. And I kind of foresee that we could maybe see him losing. I don't know if it's going to be this time or his first step-up fight to like a true opponent or whatnot. But if you're when you see guys that are super talented, you know, that will be future champions, guys that are champions, have been champions, and you look at their resumes when they're starting off, they kind of run through guys. You know, you're fighting a level of competition like yourself where you haven't had many fights, and when you see guys with true, like, natural talent, a lot of times they're just running through guys, and that's not exactly what Nico Ali Walsh is doing here. You know, his last fight was a bit tough for him. And yeah, I'd just be on the lookout for that. Now, as far as Conceicao and Martinez goes, Conceicao going to use his movement. He's always had good footwork, okay? But he also has good angles, not unlike Vasily Lomachenko. He has good angles. He has, his thing is head movement. He's got beautiful, beautiful head movement. And he likes to counter. He's a counter fighter. Now, as we saw in the Valdez fight, he actually came out hot. Usually his style is to wait a bit until the fight progresses to a point where he can figure a guy out and then start, you know, moving forward and putting on his own offense. And until then, he's kind of just making a miss, figure him out, counter him, pick shots where he can. Not in that Valdez fight. I thought that was a really good performance of him. Not at the end there. He kind of gave the fight up. But to come out in that way actually surprised me, because I thought he'd win the Valdez fight by kind of outlasting him and just making him tired and putting it on him later in the fight, getting good counters off. That's not what happened. He came out hot, walked Valdez down, used the jabs, the straights, the whatnot, you know, to walk Valdez down throughout those first rounds of that fight, at least the first 5. And then when Valdez was frustrated, I thought he really missed an opportunity to capitalize, because Valdez got a little bit reckless. We know he's a super hard hitter, but usually he's very controlled and a good boxer as well. So you get a guy like that reckless, that's the perfect opportunity to counter-fight your opponent. I thought he missed an opportunity there because he had him frustrated and knowing, I'm losing this fight. That's 5 rounds deep. I might have lost all of these. Nonetheless, I thought that it's good to see a new wrinkle in his game. To see that a guy like that, who fights like that always, can also just change it up and come out and be the aggressor and walk his opponent down and put on good offense, even though he's known as a slick counter fighter, just says a lot. And the guy has a not only good wins, great wins in his amateur career, in Conceicao, he also has a lot of fights, kind of like Lomachenko. You know, these guys have over 100 amateur fights. They get him and Lomachenko similar in the fact that they got into their pro career late. They didn't do some amateur fights or try to make it to the Olympics once, which that's kind of customary, and then hop over to the pros, you know, when you're still in your mid-20s. These guys came into the pros later on in their life, and just ate up all that amateur experience. And it's proven for both of them to be a very good way to do it. Now you have limited time to work. That's the give and take there, is that you have limited time to work because you're older and you're fighting the most extreme of level of competition. So you have limited time to work, so you need to take these kind of fights like he is on a quick turnaround off a loss to fight another undefeated guy. It's a good look for him. I like Conceicao to win this fight for sure, but also you know, we might get a knockout here. I think that we get at least a knockdown, if not multiple knockdowns, because he's so slick, because he's so good at counterfighting. So I just think that, at the end of the day, it's going to be the experience that plays in there. And Martinez is known to be a little bit aggressive of a fighter, and being as he hasn't really fought anybody yet, to fight a guy on the level of Robson, and to, unless he's changed his camp up to really prepare for this specific guy. I think that if he just comes out believing in himself and let me just be aggressive in my style, man, we might see a short night here. We might see a short night. I think that we see him, Conceicao, just kind of school him in boxing, honestly. Also, when I had looked this up earlier, it looked like we were going to get Clarissa Shields in a co-main event on some sort of boxing card here. I think they've moved that now. You know, I think they moved that, but Clarissa Shields has been messing around with MMA, which that's great. She's even had an MMA win. Now, she took a loss in her last performance, but no one expected her to do any sort of well. She's a fantastic talent, but now she's mixing it up. Listen, she is a fantastic talent, because it's not going to shock anybody if she beats the best women in the world, but she's at a higher weight class than people like Amanda Serrano or Katie Taylor, or these people that are these females that are very, very, very good fighters, that have a good at this point, at this day and age, with where women's fighting is at, they have some other good names in their divisions that they have already had to face off with, if not multiple times. Clarissa Shields is kind of a woman on her own island up there in that higher weight class. There's not a lot of good competition for her. So people saying she's the best in the world, I do want to touch on, no. You know what we're going to see? We're going to see the best female fighters in the world fight each other when we see Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano around the Puerto Rican Day Parade or St. Patrick's Day in New York. That's the fight that we all want, and that's when we're gonna really get to see where people are at. This guy's waving to me. Maybe just get out of the road. All right. So that's when we're gonna see the best females fighting. But yeah, Conceicao all the way. There's a lot of heavy favorites if you'd like to parlay them up on this thing. And to be honest with you, I'm sure if they do have a line for Nico Ali Walsh, it might be massive. I would stay away from that. I would stay away from that because I think that it's a lot of name value. And who knows, the kid might stick with it and really become great. But I really do see a loss very shortly here in his future, because they make a lot of his name. If he was a regular guy, they would more talk about him like, oh, he's not ready. I mean, really, any announcer, any person, any analyst, any fighters, they would talk about him like they do with anybody else and say, oh man, you know, the kid's got a lot of heart, look at that. And they'd say what's fair to him. He has a good shot on him. You know, he can hit with power, but yeah, he's clearly not ready for a step up in competition. I think they moved this kid a little faster than he needs to be moved because of that name value. But anyways, until next time, loyal fight fans, you know, tell your grandmother about this podcast, right? Tell your friends, and especially if you have an ex-girlfriend, right? A crazy one. You gotta get her invested. You gotta get her invested in the podcast as well, okay? And you know what to do with the thumbs up button. Get nice and familiar with it. Hit the subscribe button. Yeah. And until next time, we'll see you then. Let's go Conceicao.